Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is going to be another classic movie review for you guys, and this time I'm going to be reviewing a true horror movie classic, the 1980 I'm going to say psychological thriller, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. Now, the way I really wanted to see this movie, and I was planning on reviewing this movie to you guys till Tuesday because it comes on HBO Go that day. However, I really want to see a lot of Stanley Kubrick movies, and, I kept getting recommended a whole bunch of Stanley Kubrick movies, so I went ahead and got this set, which has The Shining, and I was really looking forward, it had The Shining and two other movies, which I'll review all three of these two, but the first one I'm reviewing is The Shining, and I was really looking forward to The Shining, and overall, what I think of The Shining is probably my favorite horror movie of all time. I love this movie. I think it's a fantastic movie. And, one of the things I love about this movie is it's very, pacing and things like that, which I'll get to, but it's a very good movie, and it's a movie that I'd recommend all of you watch, because honestly, this movie is actually good for people who don't like horror, and I'll explain that as well, but let's get to what this movie's about. Basically, this movie's about this guy, Jack Torrance, he is a writer, and he's a recovering alcoholic, and he ends up and in the very beginning of the movie, we see him applying for a job, and he takes this job as a off-season caretaker at a hotel, and, he's told before, well, this hotel, it gets very, very cold here, we get snowed in, so if you come in this hotel, you can never leave this hotel from November to May. You're gonna be trapped in this hotel from November to May, and it's fine if you want to apply for a job here, but just wanted to warn you, and basically, he is warned that the last guy that was in this hotel got cabin fever and went crazy and killed his wife and son. And his young son starts to possess psychic abilities, and he's able to see things from the past and the future. And basically, the family starts getting trapped in by a snowstorm, and the more, and basically Jack, he becomes influenced by a supernatural presence, and he descends into madness, and, he basically just starts to go mad, basically, and the other plot, the other thing is, he says he's never been here before, but the question is, has he really been here before, because his son starts to develop psychic abilities that might bring a clue to if he's been there before or not, and that's pretty much what the plot is about. There's a lot more to go through, but if I talk about what else happens in the plot, then we'll get to spoiler territory, but, this movie is just, wow, it is fantastic, and the interesting thing about this movie is, it's based on a Stephen King book, right? Well, Stephen King, wrote this book and everything. Stanley Kubrick made the movie. Stephen King was pissed off at Stanley Kubrick after he wrote this movie, because Stanley Kubrick literally changed the whole story. So you can't even call this, a book-to-movie adaptation, because it's really not. It's based on the story, but he completely changed the movie, and, he completely changed the story, and Stephen King was pretty pissed off about it, and believe it or not, this movie actually had very bad reviews when it first came out, and that's very surprising, because it's a fantastic movie, and one of the things that makes this movie so good is the acting. The acting in this movie is fantastic. I love the acting. I think the acting is one of the best parts of this movie. Basically, our main star here is Jack Nicholson, and he is fantastic in this role. I think this might be my favorite Jack Nicholson performance. I have not seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest yet, but I will be watching that soon. But I do think that this is probably his best performance. I mean, this movie is just, he is so good in this role. At first, he's like this guy who really wants to, who is a very good devoted father to his son, and really cares about his wife and things like that. And, he's a writer and everything, and you really cared about his character in the beginning of the movie, but as things, start to go on, a lot of crazy shit starts to go down, he starts to become mad, and that's when his performance just got amazing, and especially the famous line, "Here's Johnny," "Here's Johnny," that's the famous line. It has to do with, this scene right here. Well, that line was actually improv'd by Jack Nicholson. He was not told to do that. He was not, no one told him to do that. Stanley Kubrick did not say, do this. Stanley Kubrick, one of the things that Stanley Kubrick loves to do is to have his actors improv, do what they think is right, and honestly, that's a perfect line, because it's really, really creepy, and it's quoted so much to this day. This movie is very quotable lines. Here's Johnny is one of them, and especially all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. That's also very famous. But those two things are very, very famous lines, and they still are famous today. So yeah, Jack Nicholson definitely gave a great performance, and I really loved his character. Shelley Duvall as his wife Wendy, you really, really cared for her because she was the one who really wanted to help her, really wanted to help Jack. She wanted to get him out of this state that he's in, get him out of this craziness that he's in, and do whatever she can to help him get better, basically. But, you knew that he wasn't going to get any better. You knew that, because at the beginning of the movie they talked about the whole cabin fever thing. You knew it wasn't going to get good for him. You knew he wasn't going to get better. You knew it wasn't going to get any better for him. And, because of that, because of that, she was kind of entangled in all of his crazy shit that was going on. And she did a very good job, I thought. I thought she did a very good job. And I thought she was definitely very, very good. Now, Danny Lloyd played his son, Danny. I find it funny that a lot of the characters in this movie, their first names are actually their first names in the movie. I just find that kind of interesting. But Danny Lloyd, wow, this kid can act really well. I mean, a lot of times when you have child actors, they can't act very well. They're kind of inexperienced and things like that. This is not one of those actors. This kid can act, and wow, this kid can act, especially the scenes where he is possessed. It's not as creepy. It's not like The Exorcist. I've never seen The Exorcist, but I've heard that's the creepiest possession movie. However, he was still amazing in this movie. I thought he did a very, very good job, especially Rad Ram, that scene. That's another one of the quotable lines in this movie. But he did a very, very good job. I really enjoyed his acting in the movie. Very, very good job from him. He was definitely very, very good. Scott Crothers played Dick. He was the chief of the hotel, and he did a very good job as well. I really like that he knew there was something going on, but I like that he was trying to help them at all costs, and he knew there was something that was going to happen, that was going on, and he did whatever he could to stop it. And I really enjoyed his acting in the movie. He kind of this little subplot, like he's in the movie. He's just as important as the three central characters, but he is sort of like the subplot of the movie. And there are two more people I'll talk about, really. Barry Nelson as Stuart Ullman. He is a very important role because he's kind of the guy that's like, that warns Jack, hey, the last guy that was in here went crazy, just warning you. But he did a very good job. And also, Philip Stone as Delbert Grady. So creepy. Literally so creepy in this movie. He did a great job, but he was so creepy. And even creepier was Lisa Burns and Louise Burns as the Grady daughters. There's that famous line, come play with us forever and ever. There's that famous line. And they too were so creepy. And that's one of the great things about this movie, is it's genuinely scary. There aren't many... this movie, I don't classify it as a horror movie, and I'll get to why, but, I definitely think that's definitely a very good thing. Now, the movie is directed by Stanley Kubrick, and wow, did he do a great job with this movie. He really does a great job with this movie. What he does with his movies was... Stanley Kubrick, what he does is he doesn't, he puts you into that movie, and his movies aren't scary. It's more the feeling you get while watching this movie. You get this feeling of eeriness in this movie. You get this feeling of, like, oh my god, this is terrifying, but it's not but what's happening on the screen is not terrifying. Yes, what's happening on the screen is terrifying, but it's more like, think about it. What if this were to happen to you? What if you went to this hotel, you didn't know what was going on, and all of a sudden, someone you knew very well just went crazy and tried to kill you? Well, that's really what's so crazy about the movie, and what's so creepy about the movie, and I thought Stanley Kubrick did a very good job. He also produced the movie, he did the screenplay, like, he did a lot with this movie, and he did a very good job with doing that, and there were some great shots in the movie as well. The sets in the movie were amazing. The sets were so eerie, so creepy, and that's one of the best things about this movie. And the cinematography is also great. John Alcott did cinematography, very, very good. And the editing to this movie. Now, that's one of the things that some people have the problem with in this movie, which is, here's the thing with this movie. either people love this version or they love the Stephen King version. Now, Stephen King did make his into an actual TV movie, but it was nowhere near as much of a success as this one is. When people think The Shining, this is what they think of. Now, this movie, if you guys don't know, it's very slow paced. It takes a while to get going. But I like the way they do that because it's like, okay, you think you know what movie you're in for, you think you're in for this psychological thriller, but then halfway through the movie, it becomes this really creepy horror movie, and they do a very good job with doing that, and that was definitely very, very good. And now we're going to talk about some of the spoilers and also a little bit of an analysis. So if you guys have not seen The Shining, which you definitely should. I don't know why someone hasn't seen The Shining. Definitely, if you want to see, I definitely would say The Shining to be your first Stanley Kubrick movie. Definitely, don't watch Jester's review. Okay. So the biggest thing I have to talk about with this movie, of course, is the whole thing with him going crazy at the end. He chased his son Danny into the ice maze, and he froze to death. But then at the end of the movie, of course, we found out that he was in that picture, and he was at the hotel before because, he says, I've never been here before, and he has been here before. Now, I think what that's kind of trying to say is that guy's really not him. That is supposed to represent the people that went crazy, just like he did. That's who that's supposed to represent, because remember they said, people that always come here get cabin fever, and he got cabin fever, and they said the guy before did. So I'm assuming that there have been many residents of room 237, and because of that, they've gone insane and batshit like he did, and the only reason he's in that picture is because it's trying to represent, that this is going to keep going on for years and years and years, and it's never going to end. And I think that's a really awesome way they did. I like that the movie doesn't really tell you the truth. The movie doesn't really tell you what's going on. They want you to think for yourself, and I think that's a great thing with the movie. I like that they do that, definitely. The other thing that's great about this movie, of course, is as I said, he was there before, definitely. We knew he was there, and, he was there before. We know that. Now, of course, there's that other, weird thing that was going on with, him going crazy and everything. And also, there's the possibility of why was, remember Shelley Vall's character, Wendy, she goes into that room, and she sees, Grady and this guy in a bear suit, having sex or whatever, and I don't know what that's really trying to show. I really don't know what that's trying to show, really. I've heard some theories, for example, Jack might have been gay in a past life. We don't know, but, that's pretty much what that's trying to show. I really don't know how to explain it. This movie is not the easiest movie to analyze. It's really not. However, I think the best way to analyze this movie is that, even though they keep saying, Jack's been here before, it's not that he's been there before, it's that there's been many people like him who have gone crazy, and he's not the first one. Obviously, he's not the first one because they told him that in the beginning of the movie, but he's not the first one to go crazy, and there's going to be more and more for generations to come, and I think his son getting possessed is kind of a sign that he eventually in his life is going to go crazy. I think that's kind of what they're trying to show there, but I don't know. But that's pretty much all I really have to say about The Shining, and the only other thing I will say about this movie is, as I said, this movie was not very well received with critics when it first came out. People are criticizing it, saying, this movie it's not good, they changed everything from the Stephen King movie. It was one of those, big, one of those first big novel to movie adaptations. It's actually, I think, one of the reasons why people are so critical with saying it's not like the book, because of this movie, really. It's not like the book, and because of that, Stephen King then created a TV movie called The Shining, which I already said, but he did create a movie called The Shining, and it had everything from the novel, but most people say it's definitely not as good as this, and, some people say it's better, some people say it's worse. It's either way, people love this movie. Either way, people remember this movie, and it's still one of the most quoted movies of today, and it is a movie that I think everyone should check out because it is fantastic. That's pretty much it for my review of The Shining. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Let me know what you guys saw of this movie. Again, probably one of the creepiest horror movies I've seen. Oh, I did forget to explain how it turns into a horror movie. When he goes crazy and he basically says, I'm just gonna bash your brains in, that's when it starts to turn into a horror movie. And that's what's so great about this movie is, Stanley Kubrick kind of changes the tone in the third half of the movie, and it's really, really cool the way he does that. That's been my review. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in my next video, which will either be for a classic movie review or for my review of Big Brother 16. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.